Our heroes were already on the street. The girl in the blue tracksuit shouted loudly to her partner, "Xia Tian, then hurry up. I beg you very much. Of course I will do everything as quickly as possible. You go, and I'll go home to get some clothes," the young man answered the girl. Our hero turned away from the girl and immediately began calling on his phone. "Hello, how are you, cousin?" the young man asked. My cousin answered the phone. "Don't come back until Xia Tian. I saw Wang Nianlin wandering below. I don't know what kind of trouble he's up to." After this phrase, the young man smiled and answered the phone. "Don't worry, cousin. Since he's there, I should help you clean up the trash." Our hero named Xia Tian, "Let's talk on the phone," and went further down the street. Ahead of him were tall, multi-story buildings. There are many green trees around. After some time, our hero heard many steps behind him. Those footsteps were getting closer and closer every second. Xia Tian stopped and put his hands, as always, in his trouser pockets. There were several young men behind him. They all wanted to get there because some of them had baseball bats in their hands. Xia Tian calmly stood with his back to these guys. A few seconds later, the young people were already running towards our hero to beat him right from behind. The young man closed his eyes and concentrated completely. My instincts and X-ray vision never let him down. Xia Tian calculated all the moves and strikes, absolutely everything that these young people will do at the moment. A fight ensued and our hero deftly dodged every blow. And then he himself dealt insidious blows to the offenders. It was a very serious fight. Large clouds of dust were raised from the ground. Our hero fought off his opponent's blows and struck back with his own blows. This whole fight was filmed by a young man with a phone in his hands. The video from his phone clearly showed how the young people were lying and writhing on the ground in pain, and in the middle of these poor people stood Xia Tian and just looked at them. A man with blonde hair and a dark suit crouched behind a trash can and began to look at everything he had filmed on his phone. "That's what I wanted," the man thought at that moment. "Now you just need to trim and edit the video a little and go report it to the newspaper. Report that he is beating the citizens of this city," a man with blonde hair said out loud. And as soon as the man said this phrase, the phone was pulled out of his hands. The man was scared and could only utter a question. "What's happening?" It was very unexpected. The man with blonde hair looked up and saw our hero named Xia Tian standing in front of him. He holds in his hands his phone, on which all the videos were. Our hero got very angry and simply squeezed the phone in his fist. It was so strong that the screen began to crack, and the phone began to crack from the fact that it was breaking into pieces. A man with blonde hair hid under the trash can and spoke in panic and fear. "What are you doing? Don't come closer to me." Xia Tian walked very close to the man with blonde hair. Looking into his eyes, our hero began to speak. "I have to ask you, what are you doing here? Never do such dirty tricks with me and stay away from Qing Shui, otherwise you will regret it," the young man said, and abruptly threw the phone to the ground. The phone had numerous scratches and cracks on the screen. The man with blonde hair stood up on his feet and listened carefully to our hero named Xia Tian. It was clear that he was very scared. The man frowned and thought, "You wait, Xia Tian. I'm not done with you yet. This is just the beginning." A man with blonde hair and a dark suit began to walk away towards the city. He was so scared that he could not practically move. His legs did not obey him, so he walked very slowly. Then the size of his feet, the man with blonde hair ran with all his might away from this place, where our hero Xia Tian was still located. At this time a man's voice was heard in the house, which had painted hieroglyphs hanging above the doors. "Father, how is Liner?" A young man lay unconscious in the bed. There were two other men next to the bed, a gray-haired adult man and a younger man. "Father, you must save Liner." The man in the suit spoke. "Of course, he is my grandson. I will save him." An elderly gray-haired man answered. It was as if the life force had been sucked out of his body. "So you better find out who he recently offended." The man said a wish, looking at the guy who was lying unconscious in the bed. "I wish I could see who dared to attack my Wang family members," the man in the suit said, in a dissatisfied, angry voice. At this moment, our heroes returned to their room. The police girl immediately sat down at the computer. Xia Tian stood nearby and watched. "This is the most difficult mission of level E. Now you have to face the quicksand killer. Do you really want to take this task?" the girl asked in a worried voice. When I saw that it was quicksand, I immediately decided to take it, the young man said to the girl, and I thought, this is a good way to take revenge. The guys walked away from the computer and began to approach the door. Follow me, I know where to look for them. The young man named Xia Tian said. You know? Very interesting. The girl was surprised and began to follow the young man. Is this your house? Why should they be in your home? A police girl began to inquire about her partner. Since my house has always been and continues to be watched by the quicksand people, we will follow them. When they are replaced, we will go to their stronghold and destroy them all. The young man suggested it to his partner. What did you say? The two of us will deal with them? Are you crazy? The police girl began to be indignant. Going there together is suicide. No, what are the people of quicksand doing watching your house anyway? Why do you always have problems with them? The girl continued to be indignant and wave her arms. It's just a small misunderstanding. The guy began to make excuses. They think I have something they need, but that's far from true. Our heroes went to the window and began to watch. Look, they've started to act, the young man said. Knows in their strength they could get it. So why are they still following you? The girl continued to ask questions. Once we saw how on the street near the house, two men replaced each other at the post. Wait, look, they replace each other, the police girl said in a quick voice. They are the most relaxed at the moment when they have just handed over a shift. So let's take advantage of this moment, the young man said. It was late evening. Numerous stars began to appear in the sky, and it was very quiet outside. An unknown man was heading into the building. Our heroes were hiding around the corner of the building. Now we'll sneak up on them, I'll have good accuracy, and I'll kill everyone I can. The girl began to speak in a quiet voice and reloaded her pistol. A second later, a young man named Xia Tian shouted loudly, Listen, everyone, you are surrounded by two of us, come out and give up. The men who were in this room got scared and began to look around. Are you crazy? The police girl was very angry, and the young man continued to shout from behind the wall, I'm warning you, if you don't come out and surrender, we will kill you all. The people who were in the room began to panic and try to escape from the crime scene. A large group of people rushed to run out of the building. Xia Tian, we weren't looking for you, but you yourself came to us. The men were included. Damn, you exposed us. The girl, the policeman, began to become indignant and aimed her pistol. Sorry, forgive me. Our hero spoke calmly and looked carefully at the men running away in different directions. He put his two fingers together and held the needles in them. Xia Tian assessed the situation, and with a sharp movement of his hand, he threw all the long needles at these people. Everyone who was hit by this needle began to fall to the ground. People fell exhausted, as if someone had knocked them down. Follow me, the young man said to the girl. What? I only managed to fire one shot, she said in surprise. The girl looked at her pistol. One man who still had some strength left decided to attack our hero and immediately received a severe blow to the head. With a good blow, the man turned over in the air and fell to the ground. Xia Tian walked over to the two men lying on the floor and put his hands on their necks to take their pulse. What's happening? When did he become so strong? The rest of the men who were beaten by our hero were indignant. I told you to give up, otherwise you might get beaten up. The young man repeated his phrase to the men once again. I said it, I did it. The men were scared again. One of them shouted loudly, Let's run! He turned sharply and began to run away from the room. But a young man named Xia Tian quickly caught up with the fleeing man and stuck my needle right into his neck. The man screamed in pain and fear, and a few seconds later, the running man, without strength or signs of life, fell to the floor. He fell face down on the floor. There were two more left. These two men were quietly creeping up behind our hero. They wanted to sneakily deal him a crushing blow behind his back. At the same second, we heard two loud shots from a pistol. Each shot hit these men squarely in the chest. The young man turned around and looked surprised. The extremely concentrated girl police officer held the gun tightly in her hands and controlled the situation. It was she who fired two shots right on target. The young man named Xia Tian turned to the police girl, showed a thumbs up and said loudly, Smart girl. After some time, a police car arrived with flashing lights. She stopped right at the entrance to the building. Xia Tian looked at his partner in surprise. The guy really didn't expect it. Now you can see the police here. He understood perfectly well that he could cope alone. Yes, I called for backup. I decided that it would be better this way. Looking into the eyes of the young man, the police girl said. A bald man in a suit and tie approached our heroes. Did you two do this together? The man asked. She did everything herself. I just stood aside and watched. Xia Tian quickly replied. The girl didn't know what to answer. Then congratulations from today. You are a second-class member of the Special Forces team, said a bald man wearing a suit. The girl was very happy. Is this true, Captain? The girl asked in a trembling and worried voice. I congratulate you. I already told you that you are smart. Keep it up. Our hero began to encourage his partner. The police girl was embarrassed. Her cheeks on her face turned red. Thank you very much. I couldn't have done anything without you, the girl said. At that moment, a blonde girl from a Special Forces team saw the latest news on her phone. She saw that her opponent came forward and became a class higher. Lin Bing Bing, from now on you and I will only be rivals, a blonde girl in a pink suit said in anger. She squeezed the phone tightly with her hands and continued to get angry. Mr. Hu, something happened to Wang Nianlin. This guy named Xia Tian has done something wrong again. He really does what he wants. He has disgraced the 4 young masters of Zhanghai, said the man with a cup in his hands. Beat him to death, can you hear me? Until death. He is close to Zheng Ru. Use Zheng Ru to lure him in, then slam the door and kill them both. The man continued talking. Another man sitting nearby was very scared. His eyes darted around in fear, and sweat appeared on his face. He said in a trembling voice, Is this possible? What? Are you really afraid of this? With our strength it is easy to take 2 lives, or are you idiots afraid to kill a woman? The man with a glass in his hand continued to insist. But the man in the white shirt didn't know what to answer, and simply lowered his eyes down. Forget it. Just kill this woman, everyone. What I can't get and no one else can get, said a man with a glass in his hand. After which he laughed loudly. So be it, the man said with a glass in his hand and continued laughing loudly. The next beautiful sunny day arrived. You and I are transported to the house where Xia Tian is located. A young man named Xia Tian woke up and began to pull himself up after sleeping near the window. This time, everything became completely clear. And quicksand, apparently, will not send people here for some time. I thought at that moment, Guy. Suddenly the phone rang unexpectedly. The young man picked up his phone, on which it was written, You have a new message. The new message was that Zheng Ru was in danger. Our hero immediately began calling back. He called his sister Ru. Answer the phone, Sister Ru. Please answer the phone. The young man spoke to himself. Suddenly the call was answered. A voice came from the phone. Hello, Xia Tian? The young man said quickly. Are you all right there? Yes, what happened? The girl answered. Don't go anywhere. Wait for me there. Our hero continued to speak. The girl had many questions. Sister Ru was worried about this situation. At that moment she thought, what happened to my Xia Tian? Is something wrong? The girl's phone rang again. She quickly raised it to her ear and galloped away. Hello, Xia Tian, is that you? What the hell is going on? The girl found out. The phone said that Xia Tian is dying in your underground parking lot. You can go down and save him. Who are you? The girl asked loudly. But the conversation ended on the phone. The girl quickly opened the door to her office and began to run out into the underground parking lot with all her might. Xia Tian, may nothing happen to you. I thought at that moment it was a girl. After some time, Sister Ru was already in the underground parking lot. She looked around and saw no one. Xia Tian, where are you? The girl asked loudly. He doesn't answer calls. Something is wrong, the girl thought. She was upset and panicked. We constantly held the phone in our hand, hoping that Xia Tian would call her back now. Suddenly a man's voice was heard in the parking lot. Sister Ru, I'm here, a voice was heard. The girl turned around and saw that a young man named Xia Tian was running towards her at the meeting. The girl was very happy, but there was a parked car next to it, in which 2 men were sitting in the dark. They were watching this situation. One man gave an order. They came. Let's take action. And he continued to closely monitor our heroes. The second man picked up his phone and repeated the same thing. We've arrived. Take action. Let's. Suddenly the bright white headlights of the neighboring cars suddenly turned on. This bright white light practically blinded the young man and girl. And a second later, there was an explosion. For some time, nothing was visible in the parking lot. There was gray smoke and fire all around. Young people ran out of the car and ran towards the young man and Rue's sister. Those who were observed in the car and given this order began to celebrate. They poured their glasses of wine and began to congratulate each other. "This time we did something great," the man in the shirt said. "Here's to our victory, and let's have a good time later." The man in the suit answered. Suddenly, our hero named Xia Tian suddenly approached the car. He said loudly through the open car window, "Where are you going? Can you take me with you?" The men were simply shocked. The guy grabbed the car handle with his hand and began to open the car door. Xia Tian sharply pulled the handle and opened the car door wide. The two men who were sitting in the car were very scared. They began to scream loudly, as if they had seen a ghost or a demon, and began to squeeze into the car seat. How could this happen? How did he manage to escape and survive? A man in a white shirt shouted, "Believe me, your luck will not last forever. Next time, next time, next time." The man in the suit repeated the same phrase. "Fool, do you really think you'll have another chance? You've gone too far by involving Sister Rue in this matter," the guy said in a calm voice. He had already given 2 long needles to his hand. The young man was very angry. With a sharp movement of his hand, he threw these 2 needles at the men who were sitting in their car. The men were completely paralyzed and did not move. The young man turned around and began to walk away from the car, saying only one thing: "You won't be able to come to your senses for the rest of your life." The men, like plants, sat in their car and could not take a single step or even move. They looked at one point with crazy eyes, and saliva flowed from their mouths. "Are you finished?" Smiling, Sister Rue asked the young man. Xia Tian, as calm as always, he smiled and put his hands in his trouser pockets. Xia Tian walked up to the girl and practically touched her head with his finger. "I told you not to go anywhere, and you left your office. But if I hadn't come quickly, you wouldn't have had such a good ending to this story." The young man said to the girl, "I was just worried about you," Sister Rue answered. "Forget about it, there will be no problems in the future," the young man named Xia Tian said, and hugged the girl. At this time, a police car was parked near a huge, tall building. The door of one of the offices in this office was sealed. They were pasted with striped tape, symbolizing that entry was prohibited. 2 policemen were on duty near the door. A girl, Police Officer Bing Bing, appeared in the corridor. She looked at the police and said, "Then I'll go back to the department first." "Take your time with this," one of the policemen, who was in the corridor near the sealed door, answered. The girl named Bing Bing went to the elevator. The elevator was already on her floor, so the door opened immediately. The police girl entered the elevator. She pressed the desired floor, and the elevator moved. It was clear from her face that she was excited about something. It was clear that the girl was alarmed. After some time, the elevator stopped on the first floor. The elevator doors began to open slowly. When the elevator doors opened completely on the first floor, the police girl practically began to fall out of the elevator. There were police officers standing near the elevator doors. The men and the police were shocked, because this girl was practically unconscious, and they couldn't even imagine how she could even stand on her feet. It was clear that she was very ill. "Captain Lin? Is that you?" one policeman asked. "Captain, what happened to you?" "Thanks, another cop." Then the action began to take place in the city hospital. Lin Bingbing was rushed there. Our hero named Xia Tian was already running with all his might to this city hospital. The young man ran to the hospital and hoped that everything would be fine. Anxiety and fear were visible on his face. Not understanding the situation, what happened, he was very worried. A few seconds later, the young man opened the door of the hospital room. "You called me. What's happened?" "Thanks, the guy at the policeman's." A policeman stood near the hospital bed. He was upset and practically didn't say a word. "Yes, it was me who called." The policeman began to answer. "I remember that Mr. Xia Tian and Captain Lin know each other very well, so I quickly dialed your number." Xia Tian sat down on a chair near the bed in which his partner lay unconscious. "What's your name? I'm in your debt," the guy told the policeman. "My name is Chien." "Don't say that. It was just a gesture of goodwill." The policeman answered. It was clear that this man was a policeman, very kind and had a good heart. A young man named Siam put 2 of his fingers on the girl's wrist. He began to feel and measure the pulse. The young man carefully examined the girl who was lying in a hospital bed. His partner didn't move, and she showed no signs of life. She was very weak. Feeling her pulse, the guy thought it was very strange. "How did she get sick?" the guy asked in a worried voice. "We were investigating a murder case where the victim died in a strange manner, and there were no leads. And Captain Lin fainted as soon as she left there." The policeman answered the young man. Then our hero put his 2 hands on his partner's head. He closed his eyes and fell silent. The wind began to swirl around him and the girl. Xia Tian is a glorious magician and sorcerer who tried to heal the girl. The young man opened his eyes sharply. His pupils were yellow, and from his evil eye came a glow. He looked carefully with his X-ray gaze at his partner, who was lying on the hospital bed. Xia Tian began to gently stroke the girl's face and head with his palms. A yellow glow and warmth emanated from his hands. But while the girl lay there and showed no signs of life, after some time, a dark cloud began to rise up from the body of the police officer's girl, a cloud of black dust that scattered in the air and rose to the very ceiling of the hospital. The young man, named Xia Tian, took out 2 long needles from his pocket and held them between 2 fingers. The boy threw 2 of his needles into the girl's body. The needles first flew through the gray and black smoke that came from the girl's body. After a few seconds, the girl began to show the first signs of life. Lin opened her mouth slightly and said faintly, "My head. It hurts a lot." The policeman simply couldn't believe his eyes. He was so happy and immediately said, "Look, she woke up. This is simply incredible. It's just a miracle." The girl Lin Bingbing really woke up. She sat down in her bed and began to talk. "How did I end up here? What the hell is going on?" she asked. The girl held her head with her hand. "I don't know exactly what kind of entity it was, but she looked like a ghost from a movie, and I think she was created by people." The guy answered her. The girl was very scared. She opened her eyes wide and said loudly, "Ghost? Don't joke like that. You're just sick. This entity has drained a lot of your energy. You are very weak now, so lie down here and rest, and I will go and get some fresh air," Xia Tianyi said, and patted the girl on the shoulder with his hand. Lin was very scared. The guy asked the policeman to take him outside. "Show me the way so I don't get lost, and we need to talk," the guy said. As soon as the young man and the policeman left the hospital room, our hero immediately stopped and froze. "The person who suffered the accident is on the 18th floor. The policeman answered our hero. The young man and the police entered the elevator. The elevator began to rise to the upper floors at breakneck speed. The policeman screamed in fear. "What's happened?" The young man began to spin his arm violently and threw 2 needles. "How dare you play such tricks in front of me?" Xia Tian said. The number 18 appeared on the screen. This meant only one thing, that the elevator had reached the desired floor. "I'm scared to death. What was that?" The policeman spoke in an alarming voice. "Wait for me here and leave in a minute," the young man said to the policeman. "Mr. Xia Tian, you have the wrong apartment. The deceased was in the next apartment," he told the police to the boy, looking at him as he walked past the sealed door. "Thank you, I know that. But I know the killer is here," the young man said and knocked on the door. The policeman was still trembling with fear and did not understand what was happening. A young man named Xia Tian opened the next door. The guy stopped at the threshold of the door and began to look around. The young man entered the room. The room was quiet and very calm, which couldn't help but be alarming. Xia Tian froze and began to look around. With his X-ray gaze, he assessed the situation and peered into every centimeter of this room. "Who touched my future wife? Come out here," the guy said. The room began to get dark and gray, and black smoke appeared, the same as that coming out of his girlfriend's body. "You ruined my plan and hurt my child, didn't you?" a voice rang out. "I've had many enemies before, but this is the first time I've had to deal with someone like this guy," the young man answered. "Come out quickly. I'm here to start a fight." "I no longer intend to talk or teach good manners," Xia Tian said. A man in black clothes and a hood on his head appeared behind our hero. "You're a boy who doesn't know what he's doing," said the man in black clothes. At that moment our hero began to slowly turn around. The shine appeared in his eyes again, and his pupils became yellow. The young man saw a man standing next to him, without any emotion on his face. The hero named Xia Tian was a little scared. "What the hell is this?" he shouted loudly. "Your energy is very strong, baby. You are a treasure for my practice. I needed virgin energy to break through, but you'll do just fine." The man spoke and waved his hand. The same black smoke was coming from his hand, and his fingers had long, sharp nails. Jia Tian looked at this man carefully and said, "You are something. You are neither human nor a ghost." Having uttered these words, our hero was already pinching 3 long needles with his 2 fingers. "My kids, go ahead," said the man in black clothes. He waved his hand and black smoke began to come out of it. The young man immediately threw all 3 long needles at this black cloud. The black cloud began to dissipate, and a green tint appeared. It looked very strange. The young man froze, and began to look carefully at the man who was wearing black clothes and standing opposite him. With his X-ray vision, he read further situations. "First, I have to finish myself," our hero shouted loudly. He jumped up and began to swing his fist to strike. The boy threw a strong punch directly at the man's hand. The blow was strong and very fast. After such a strong blow, the man in black clothes bent his arm in half. "Why are you so weak? I thought you were a master." Our hero, named Jia Tian, began to speak. The man was very angry, and it was clear that he was in pain. Business began to glow around him, and he gave the order, "Kill him." These transparent demons attacked our hero and began to bite him on the shoulders. "How cold it is," the young man thought at that moment. Then our hero waved his hands, and a fireball began to glow in front of his body. "Elimination of formation," the boy said loudly. "Don't come close to me, you are a monster." A man in black clothes screamed in fear. He waved his hand, trying to keep the young man away from him. "Who are you calling a monster?" our hero asked loudly, after which he immediately delivered a strong blow with his fist right to the jaw. With such a strong blow, the man in black clothes flew to the side. The policeman, who remained in the corridor near the sealed door, walked from side to side and did not know what to do. He did not understand what was happening to the boy now. Then the men, police officers, heard a loud noise in the next room. The policeman ran to the door to open it. At that moment, Jia Tian himself opened the door. He was absolutely calm. With his left hand he opened the door, and with his right hand he pulled the clothes of the man who was fighting with him. "What is this?" the policeman asked in surprise. "What's happened?" the policeman continued to ask our hero in a trembling, frightened voice. He looked at a man lying on the floor with a strange broken arm that had long, sharp nails. "He committed a crime. Take him away and interrogate him. If he doesn't say anything, then tell him that I will return to him if he remains silent," the boy told the policeman. After this, the young man named Jia Tian went back to the city hospital to see his girlfriend. The young man entered the ward to see his partner. "You came back so quickly. You're not injured, are you?" The girl began to worry. "Am I okay? I took care of the matter especially for you." The young man began to smile and speak. "You saved my life again and helped me solve the case. I owe you more and more." Looking into the eyes of the young man, the girl spoke. "If you become my wife, you will pay me for everything at once," our hero said to the girl and smiled. Here we go again. It started again. The girl began to be indignant and covered herself with a blanket. At that moment, the phone in our young man's pocket began to ring. A loud melody was heard from my pocket. The young man picked up the phone. On the phone he said hello and said hi. A man's voice was heard on the phone. "Jia Tian, this is Wang Nianlin's father. Come to me, I want to talk to you." "Sorry, but I don't know anyone named Wang Nianlin," Jia Tian answered on the phone, and he hung up the call. "Jia Tian!" the man shouted in a loud voice. He was just angry. A woman approached this man with a phone. "Do you have problems with this Jia Tian?" the woman asked loudly. "I know what his weakness is." Looking into the eyes of the man, the woman said, and it was clear from her eyes that she was planning something. At this time, our hero picked up an apple knife and began to peel the peel. "Please don't peel it, just wash it and I'll eat it," the girl said. "No, just let me be a model visitor to your room." The young man answered and continued peeling the apple. The phone rang again. Jia Tian continued to peel the apple. So with one ear, he pressed the phone to his shoulder and asked, "Hello?" On the other end of the conversation, a girl with a phone in her hands and blonde hair said, "Qing Shui was kidnapped." The young man threw a knife and an apple on the table. Fear and anxiety appeared on his face. At this moment, he didn't even know what to answer. "Stay there. I'm coming. Remember, don't call the police. the boy said and ran out of the hospital room. At this time, two best friends were talking in the room. "Sister, this is a funny situation," said a girl in a white t-shirt and skirt. "I don't like to watch such fun. It's fun." Girlfriend continuing to read the book. "We are talking about the very god of basketball. Do you really care?" A friend began to talk and sow intrigue. The girl looked away from the book. She looked at one point and thought for a second. "He?" the girl asked again. At this time on the street, our hero met a blonde girl who called him. She was very upset and crying. "I was in a panic and did not remember the car number. I found myself so useless." The girl continued to cry. The young man began to calm down and talk. "Don't blame yourself. I will return Sister Ching Shui." The young man's phone rang again. A voice came through the receiver. "Hello." The young man immediately responded to this. "Don't bother me. I'm very busy right now." They kept talking on the phone. "It's your fault, remember that." Our hero was very focused and attentive. "If my cousin loses even one hair from her head, I will destroy your entire family." The young man on the phone answered in an angry voice. "Wait, I'll go with you too." The blonde girl took our hero's hand and stopped him. "You know that Ching Sui is my best friend. I can't leave her alone." The girl spoke with tears in her eyes. "She is also my closest relative, so let's go together and bring her back," Xia Tian said, and hugged the girl with his arm. A friend and a young man walked down the street together to save their cousin. The girls stood aside and peeked. "Sister, did you see this?" one girl asked. "A murderous fool. Although not mature enough, she is truly a murderous fool." There are two types of murderous fools. One is caused by murder, the other by anger, another friend said. Anger to such an extent that there is a desire to kill another person. The other friend continued talking. Next, our events develop in the Van estate. A man in a suit sits in a chair, and a bald man stands in front of him and reports, "Sir, your plan worked. The guy is going to certain death." "Was Master Jian invited?" The man in the chair clarified. "Yes, his subordinates gave him a red envelope with 1,000,000 yuan. He promised not to talk about it. He's in the backyard now. Well, after they break his arms and legs, I will allow my son to torture him personally. This is what happens when you go against the Wang family," said the men loudly. Our hero and girl stopped near the house. Above the large tall doors was the sign of Van Manor. "Sister Binkson, where do you think I should hit first?" our hero asked the girl. "Hit in the face," the girl answered quickly. "Then in this case you first need to demolish the house," the guy said. "I suggest hitting the sign directly," the girl said. And after this phrase, our hero jumped high and began to swing his arms and legs in the air. "Well said," the young man named Xia Tian said, and he hit his foot hard right on the sign. This sign shattered into many pieces in different directions. "Today I will destroy your sign, then your bones, and finally your entire estate." The young man spoke loudly and continued to kick with his feet. "My lord, this guy broke our sign." A voice came from the house. "That this sign was made by my father." The owner of the house was indignant. Our hero watched all this. The estate was very large and beautiful. Sounds of outrage were heard throughout the street. Two girls, friends, climbed a tree and watched everything that was happening. "I'm afraid he's in trouble," said the girl in the gray t-shirt. "This is a lot of fun, big sister. I like the way this basketball god does everything," said a girl in a pink blouse, sitting on a large tree branch. "Isn't that cooler? Either way, we're here to watch the fun. For us, the more trouble there is, the better." The girl in the pink blouse continued to talk. In response, the girl in the gray t-shirt simply carefully watched what was happening in this estate and remained silent. Our hero named Xia Tian broke down the doors, opened the gate and entered the estate. "Damn this ignorant guy. Kill him, I allow it." The owner of the estate shouted loudly. This gentleman waved his hand and many men began to run towards the young man to kill him. About 5 healthy adult men ran to kill the young man named Xia Tian. Some ran away with their bare hands, while others were holding baseball bats. The girl who came with the young man to the gates of this estate was very frightened. She was terrified and screamed loudly, "Xia Tian, be careful. Go to hell." A man with a baseball bat in his hands shouted loudly. He began to swing this bat right next to our hero's head. The young man stood in one place, completely concentrating on the situation. With his X-ray vision, he assessed the situation and calculated all moves in advance. Then he clenched his hand tightly into a fist. Within a second, The young man hit the man who was running at him with a baseball bat in his hands, hard in the chest, with both hands. An adult, strong man fell on his back and flew several meters to the side. The rest of the men froze at the situation they saw. They were slightly shocked. "Are you really afraid? Why did you chicken out? But I'll tell you the truth, it's too late." Smiling, the young man said to the older men. Immortal steps forcing the clouds. The young man cast a spell, and a very serious fight ensued. Dust rose from the ground, and nothing was visible. As soon as the dust cleared, it was clear from the retro that all the men were lying on the ground and writhing in pain. And in the middle of the estate stands our hero. The gentleman who is the owner of this estate pointed his finger at the young man and loudly shouted only one word, "You!" A man standing nearby with a braid on his head said, "My lord, don't worry." "Master Jian, please," said the gentleman. "I am the guardian of the Wang family, and since someone dared to destroy the tablet of the Wang family, then I must intervene and punish this scoundrel." The master answered. "But before I do that, who is your master guy?" The man asked our hero. "You are not worthy to ask me who my master is." The boy answered proudly and with a smile. "I didn't want to kill my friend's student, but since you're so ungrateful, then it's not my fault," the man said and took a fighting stance. "What nonsense are you talking about?" The young man was indignant. He sharply pushed his feet off the ground and jumped towards the master. "Arrogant guy, beating an eggstone," the master said indignantly and clenched his fingers tightly into a fist. The man delivered a strong blow with his fist right in the face of our hero. But at that moment, the young man abruptly stopped this fist with his signature blow, namely, 2 fingers. Jiatian seed this hand like an X-ray. He saw how the bones of this arm cracked and broke from his blow. The master shouted loudly. He began to shake his hand in different directions. All his fingers and arms were broken. "Remember what I said? Today I will first tear down the sign and then break the bones." The young man named Xia Tian repeated once again and jumped high, clenching his hands tightly into fists. The gentleman put his hand forward and screamed in horror, "Enough! Enough! Calm down!" "So I didn't understand? What did you say?" "I didn't hear you right," our hero said indignantly and loudly. The young man sharply and strongly grabbed with his right hand the left hand of the master in gray clothes and with an oblique head. "I said quickly, 'Let Master Jian go, or I will make you regret it for the rest of your life.'" The man with the mustache shouted very loudly. Xiatian lowered the man, whom everyone called Master, and he fell to his knees in front of him. "Please, if that's what you want." "I let him go," the young man said. The master in black trousers and a gray suit, and also with a pigtail on his head, stood on his knees, resting his hands on the ground. "Please, I'll give it back to you." The young man named Xia Tian said loudly and kicked this master hard in the jaw. The blow was so strong that the man's face and jaw were twisted to one side. He just charged like a family. I flew several meters away from our hero. It all happened as if in slow motion of some kind of movie. The master flew through the air along his master and screamed in pain. This man, whom everyone called the master, fell next to his master. The gentleman shouted, "No, not this," but the master was already unconscious. Another man picked up the unconscious master onto his shoulder and held him alone. "One does not act so ruthlessly at such a young age," said the bald man. "When you find someone to beat me, you don't say that I'm young. You are silent about the fact that I am at a young age. This means that the reason is entirely yours," the guy said. "But you have nothing to do with it. I don't have any questions or matters for you." The young man Alice spoke to the man who was standing in a dressing gown. Our hero pointed his finger at his offender. "A man in a gray suit. We have nothing to do with it. He is the one I want to fight next," the guy said. "What kind of place do you think this is?" He began to resent being in a suit. "Can you hit whoever you want? You can come and go as you please?" Our hero smiled, turned around, waved his hand and said, "When I leave here," and everyone was simply shocked by his courage and impudence. All the people stood in the yard silently and simply watched the guy go. "Okay, I see that you don't want to communicate. Then I'm here again," our hero said and smiled. "How about this? Can any of you stop me?" The boy smiled and asked, "I will tell you the following, and remember these words, boy. As long as I'm here, you won't be able to move. Here I am in charge. Here are my rules." A man in a gray suit shouted loudly. If I want to go, then believe me, no one can stop me, our hero answered in a very calm voice. The bald man in a robe narrowed his eyebrows and began to be indignant. You have character, boy, but don't forget that I'm here. Boy, you haven't reached my level yet. You just don't know what you're doing. Even Fang Rufin wouldn't dare talk to me like that. The bald man in a robe became indignant and took a fighting stance. Who are you? Smiling, the young man began to ask. Maybe you're sick, right? Fan is so well-mannered, of course he won't speak like me. Forget it. Boy, are you ready? Looking into our hero's eyes, the bald man in a robe said, What? Ready for what? Why are you talking here? Not understanding the situation, the gentleman in the gray suit became indignant. Of course I'm ready, the boy said, smiling. I'm ready for a beating. Let's go? The young man shouted, and a fight immediately began. The bald man was simply shocked by the young man moving so quickly across the pyrite. It seemed like he was faster than the wind. Why are you so fast? A man on the street screamed in horror. And at this moment, a young man named Xiatian was already delivering his blows to other men standing nearby, who attacked him. Do you think I don't have it here? Said a bald man in a robe, and began to deliver his quick blows to our hero. Xiatian began to jump back and try to dodge every blow. He understood that the opponent this time was serious. A bald man in a robe began to strike harshly directly to the body with his large fists. But our hero tried to fend off every blow. Then the young man jumped back a few meters and squatted on one knee. Xiatian carefully looked at his opponent with his X-ray gaze. He is so strong that if I had not blocked him, he would probably have broken all my ribs, the boy thought at that moment. Looks like I've been away from combat for too long, said a bald man in a robe, and in a split second, he tore off this robe and was left standing in his trousers and bare torso. His body was very well pumped up, and absolutely all muscle groups were visible. The bald man got angry, shouted loudly incomprehensible words, clenched his hand tightly into his fist, and swung it to strike our hero. The bald man swung his fist strongly towards our boy, but Xiatian managed to jump to the side. The young man dodged and even managed to kick his opponent right in the stomach at the end. The man missed, but hit right into the stone fence that stood in the yard. The blow was so strong that the stones scattered like cheeks in different directions. His sister has a problem. This old man is definitely a Zhuan-level master, and his fighting skills are also not low. She began to worry and say, A girl in a pink blouse. This man is strong, but he is not fast and not very bad. It's actually not difficult to defeat him, if you find the right opportunity, said the girl in the gray t-shirt. But as you can see, the god of basketball is only at the late yellow level. Therefore, his chances of defeating a fighter of Zhuan's level are very low. The girl in the pink t-shirt continued to worry. Let's see what happens next. The girl in the gray t-shirt answered, in a calm voice. Of course I was also very worried about our hero, but I tried to control my emotions. This battle continued not for life, but to death. Our hero began to adapt to the tactics and manner of conducting this battle of his opponent. He tried to jump further and higher from the insidious and strong blows. Boy, don't run away if you're so impudent. Don't run away from me if you consider yourself the smartest and the strongest, the bald man shouted. Damn, he's too strong to fight head-on, our hero was thinking at that moment. Then the young man named Xiatian took a running start and pushed hard with his feet off the ground to jump as high and far as possible. A second later, our hero was already flying high in the sky, several meters above his opponent's head. It turned out that the match simply made a cunning move. He distracted his opponent's attention with his high, long jump and landed right behind him. Fact, well, gotcha! The young man shouted loudly, then jumped up and with a strong kick delivered a crushing blow right to his opponent's head. It was very unexpected. The man fell to the ground with a great crash and noise. He tried to hold on to the ground and tiles with his hands, but only left scratches on the ground with his nails. Having recovered a little and regained consciousness, the bald man began to rise to his knees, resting his hands on the ground. It was a day after being renovated in space. It was a knockout. The bald man was shocked. He was also 100% furious because he didn't expect that some boy could treat him like that in this fight. The man was angry for literally a minute, and then a miracle happened. Metal bracelets began to appear on his hands, or rather on his wrists. Rubbing his hands, the bald man said, looking at the boy, "Sorry, but you made me do this, you little brat. Now I will show you how to treat grown-up uncles." "What kind of tricks is this old man doing? Can he defeat me with a few bracelets? I can't figure out if he's a magician or a fighter." Looking at the man, the young man reasoned. Without thinking for a long time, and without waiting for the next step from an adult man, whom everyone called the master, our young hero took 3 needles and sharply threw them towards his offender. The needles actually flew straight into the bald man's body, but with a sharp movement of his hands, he fought them off with his metal bracelets on his arms. "What else can a boy do?" the man shouted loudly. "I wanted to hide some of my power, but it looks like that won't be possible today." In a calm voice, reasoning and with his eyes closed, our hero spoke to his opponent. The man did not stand still, pushed off the ground with his feet, and jumped on our hero to beat him. "Stop! I order you to stop!" How loudly the girl who had just entered the courtyard of this estate shouted. Next to her stood a man in a shirt and trousers who had a long braid that reached his waist. The bald man without clothes stopped. He growled like an animal, and his eyes were narrowed. He looked at this woman with a dissatisfied look. "You kidnapped my daughter, didn't you?" The woman who had just appeared in this court began to become indignant and speak loudly. "This may be some kind of misunderstanding." "Yes, that's right, it's a misunderstanding." The men began to make excuses in fear. "Stop talking nonsense. Answer like a man. I have real evidence. Therefore, I suggest that you urgently return my daughter to me." The woman spoke loudly. The men looked at each other with frightened eyes. They began to agree on something in a whisper, but no one heard it. "You can talk there for the rest of your life. This is your own business. While you're alive, you can talk a little more. But the minute I gave you for discussion is over. I'm waiting for my daughter." The woman ordered the men. And literally a minute later, a girl's voice was heard. "Mother, Mommy!" A young girl appeared in the courtyard of the estate, screaming to her mother with tears in her eyes. The girl ran up to her mother and hugged her. "Calm down, my dear." The woman and her daughter began to speak. "It was my ungrateful son who kidnapped your daughter. But I'll tell you honestly, nothing bad happened." The old man began to apologize to the woman. "So you can kidnap people just like that? Don't you think that one day I will try to capture one of your family members? I'm wondering how you would feel about this," the woman said, hugging her daughter. The old man was very upset. He was incredibly ashamed of his son. A, whose son everyone called Mr., stood waving his arms and did not know what to say to his father. "Ain't he? I'll get even for my cousin, and you just watch." A young man named Xia Tian said in a loud, confident voice, "Please, there is no need for heroic deeds, and there is no need to be a hero here. Do you know who your opponent is? This is all Xie Chaofeng, former #1 master of Jianghai City. Believe me, whoever he is, he has nothing to do with me." The boy answered his aunt. "I haven't seen you for several days, and your strength has increased significantly." A man with a beard and a long black braid on his head began to be surprised and speak. "Do you know each other?" Aunt asked in surprise. "I've met him before and really liked him. But to be honest, I didn't know that he was your nephew." A man with a long braid on his head answered. "Fan, how long has it been since we saw you? Do you really want to join this fight too?" the man with the bald head said in an angry voice. "He Xiaofeng, you have been fighting me for 10 years, but you have never defeated me. Do you really think that I need someone else to defeat you?" said the man with a braid on his head. People stood in the courtyard of the Wang dynasty and continued to talk and argue. The girl sat on the tree and continued to watch all this. "Let's go," the girl in the gray t-shirt said, and jumped from the tree down to the ground. "What aren't you going to watch next?" the girl in the pink t-shirt asked in surprise. "Little sister, wait for me," the girl answered and jumped after her friend. At this moment, our hero named Xiatian was absolutely focused. "There is no need to talk about other people. I am good enough to defeat myself. Trust me, no help is needed." The boy spoke. The man with a bald head was shocked by this answer from this boy. But out of fear and surprise, his eyes started running, and sweat appeared on his face. The aunt and her daughter, his assistant, also stood in shock. Xuan level. How is this possible? 2 each man with a braid on his head. My God, this is not the end of the story. My aunt was thinking at that moment. Our hero was focused and concentrated. Previously Xuan level stage, middle stage of Xuan level, late stage of Xuan level. Our hero spoke these words to himself. After that, the young man approached the bald man and said, "Believe me, you will remain an idiot for the rest of your life." This was definitely not what a grown man would expect from a boy. At that second, he couldn't even find the words to answer him. Then the young man named Xia Tian took out 3 more long needles to strike. He held them in front of his face and was completely focused. "It works out for everything you've done," the boy said loudly, and threw these 3 needles right at his opponent's head. One needle stuck directly into the man's head, the second needle stuck into his chest, and the third needle will stick him right in the stomach. The man stopped abruptly, as if he had been paralyzed. Did he really defeat him? Open wide, the people who were nearby near this battle said in surprise. Our hero did not really like these words, so he slowly turned back and looked at them intently. This look said only one thing. Today, he is determined to do everything. He is serious. The old man and his son, whom everyone called Mr., began to tremble with fear. They waved their arms and big eyes, looked at the young man, and there was only one thing in their gaze. This is a plea for mercy. He is probably the only late-stage Xuan-level master in the entire city. "Xia Tian, what happened to you?" the aunt was thinking at this moment, hugging her daughter. "In fact, I have not yet reached the late stage of Xuan level. It was just a bluff." "Well, as it turns out, that's enough to scare your enemy," the hero thought at that moment. Having assessed the situation a little and thought, the young man asked, "So who's next?" After this phrase, the young man looked at the large, huge stone standing in the courtyard of this villa. Slowly he walked up to this stone, grabbed it tightly with his hands, and began to tear it off the ground to lift it above his head. The old man with a white beard was simply shocked by such courage, audacity, and strength. "What kind of house are you, boy?" the old man asked in surprise. The aunt also did not understand what her nephew was doing, and so she was indignant and simply said his name. "Xia Tian, what are you doing?" The young man did not listen to anyone, and simply tore the stone off the ground and raised it with his hands above his head. After some time, he held this huge stone with both hands above his head. Nobody understood what was happening. "So friends, as I said, first I will destroy your tablet. Then I will destroy your bones and finally your entire estate," the young man said, smiling. All the men screamed in fear. They opened their mouths wide in horror and screamed at the top of their voices. The old man only managed to shout a word. "Fast! Quickly go and take it down. Go and destroy the entire mansion." The old man began to shout and give orders to the other men who were standing in the yard. "What are you waiting for?" He began to be loudly indignant. "Sir, go. Do you really want to wait for him to peel it off with his own hands?" After these words, the men quickly went towards the mansion. "Well, our lord, it will be destroyed." The men were screaming. The men grabbed various tools and ran to break and destroy everything. Everything was covered in dust. Behind the cloud of this dust, nothing was visible. Our hero, named Xia Tian, carefully examined with his X-ray eye everything that was happening now in this estate. And then he strongly threw this huge stone, which he was holding in his hands, forward towards the house. The stone fell with a great noise and crash. The story again rose from the earth to the very sky. A man in a blue shirt and with a long sideways head laughed and said, "My young friend, Xia Tian, come to Liulan Villa to meet me for a cup of tea when you have some free time. Friends, let's get out of here too. It seems to me that we have been here for too long. The name, to be honest, is already tired," Auntie said, smiling. Soon the aunt, her daughter, her nephew Xia Tian, and men with a braid on their heads began to come out of the gates of this villa. And only one old man followed with his gaze. "Sir, what should we do next?" Did the men shout to their old man, and they continued to break and destroy everything they saw on their way. It was complete madness. Soon our heroes arrived and found themselves in the house where their aunt was. Xia Tian was sitting on the sofa opposite his aunt. A conversation was brewing.